I'm going to be talking about the religions of this region. It's called the Fertile Crescent. With a bit of imagination, you can see a kind of... This bit is the Tigris and Euphrates River valley, and this is where agriculture first began, about 3,000... Well, no, about 6,000 BC. Okay. So Sumer and Mesopotamia is the name of the region. Mesopotamia means between the two rivers in Greek. Meso, between, Potamia, rivers. And it's been a fertile land because of the rivers, which produce silt and soil, and therefore they learned to domesticate wheat. In about, well, they found strains going back to about 7,000 BC, the dawn of agriculture. And it seems that there were tribesmen who would go up to the winter pastures in the Zagros Mountains, which is taking you up onto the edge of Iran. This is all Iran. And then there was wheat growing wild there, which they learned to cultivate. By random chance, they discovered that if you planted the thing and it grew, you could then harvest the seeds and make bread. And basically it was the development of bread that gave a huge boost to mankind's survival rate. Because the hunter-gatherers didn't live very long. The food was scarce. The average age, probably you were old when you were 45, 50. Having the chance to grow enough food, supplemented by hunting, and then before long they started corralling the animals. So they invented farming as we know it. Both livestock, they had cows and sheep and goats. By about 6,000 BC, and also obviously crops, grain essentially. And it was a huge revolution, and it's called a Neolithic revolution, is the technical name for this. And what I'm interested in, and I've been studying for years, is the huge impact this had on religions. It was vast. Because what you had for the first time was settlements, settled villages, right? Because you had enough surplus that you could stay put and then grow the stuff in the fields around. So the village comes into being. The very first village they've excavated in the world is in Turkey here, called Çatalhöyük, somewhere in there, Anatolia, which is part of the same region, culturally speaking. And they've discovered what you have in these villages is temples. So you get built structures which were adorned with paintings and with altars, places of sacred offerings and stuff, and places for prayer and so on. So our modern churches or temples date back to about this time, the very first they've discovered. What's very interesting in Çatalhöyük, which is 7,000 BC, I think, it's the oldest village or small town. There's no evidence of fortifications or warfare. They seem to have lived in peace, these people. And what's also interesting from a religious point of view is they have gender balance. They have gods and goddesses aplenty. And the female priestesses seem to have been as important as the male priests in the running of the town and the religion. So you had gods and goddesses of equal importance. And that's true in the whole region. The religion I'm talking about tonight, it was much later when the kind of monotheistic ideas came in with the single God. Who's often thought of as male, the sort of typical Christian idea of God. This predates that, and we have to do a big thought leap back to ancient wisdom, ancient pagan traditions, if you want. So the other thing that they invented, and this was the huge thing really, was urbanization. The city and the city-state kicks in at about 3000 BC. And the first ones are places called another one called Uruk. And these are down in the south of the region, here. Eridu is another one. And archaeologists only really discovered this in the 19th century. And because British archaeologists went out there and dug these things up over a period of about 100 years, a lot of that stuff is in the British Museum. They found, there's a few things here that you can see. They found statues of priests and different deities and so on. And it was a revelation to European understanding of religious history, because suddenly we had all these artifacts. We had this extraordinary story beginning to emerge out of the sands, right? The other thing they discovered was they found written texts. And this is the where you get cities, you get writing. What I'm doing on the board, you couldn't do that before this invention of writing, 3000 BC. And the Sumerians invented a thing called cuneiform, which means wedge-shaped in Latin. Wedge-shaped writing. And it's a specific kind of script was developed, and I've got a handout here to show you, which you can keep. That's one. Okay. On that first page, you'll see there's a kind of map of the region, and you'll see the cities I'm talking about on the top map. Early agricultural site, Uruk, Eridu, they're down in the south there. If you turn to the very last page, right, in that little pack, you'll see how wedge-shaped writing was done, this cuneiform. It was done with a wooden spatula, imprinting into soft clay. And the shapes of it are therefore angular, right? They're kind of straight lines, little straight lines. Initially, they were sort of pictograms. Like, for instance, the cuneiform writing for God, is that. And that is pronounced An, who was the supreme god of heaven in the pantheon. He's the top god. And it was looking like a star. So there's a kind of conceptual thing in the pattern. Later, the wedge shapes, if you look at that, become more abstract. They don't look like pictures. It's difficult to draw pictures with straight lines. So the typical shapes, you can see there. It's almost a bit like Chinese writing, the kind of style. And they came to mean certain things, which it took scholars a long time to... a guy called Sir Austin Layard helped bring back a load of these scripts. And people spent a lot of time trying to crack the code. Eventually, they found in the capital city of ancient Persia, Persepolis, an inscription there left by a Persian emperor, which was in 3 scripts. Cuneiform, this thing, ancient Persian, and Greek. And it enabled them, therefore, to crack the code, and they could work it out. And there are scholars around the world that there's a cuneiform studies centre, in the British Museum, and the University of Chicago is working on a dictionary of cuneiform language. But the earliest people that I'm talking about tonight who invented this thing, the Sumerians, right, are a mystery, because we still don't know where they came from or really what their language was. It doesn't seem to be related to any other language family, like Semitic languages, like Hebrew and Arabic and stuff. And later the Babylonians take over this region. Babylon is up here, and they come from there. Now, they were Semitic peoples who were connected with the Hebrew peoples and Phoenicians here and the Arabs here. And they sort of took over and conquered the Sumerians. But the Sumerians are the most ancient people who left us any kind of religious records on the planet, and they're still a mystery.